Hello, my name is Elizabeth Christine, and today I will be discussing the author Beverly Daniel Tatum and how she brought attention to discussions about race in the classroom through her best-selling book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? Tatum is one of the country's foremost authorities on the psychology of racism. In 1997, she wrote a book discussing racial identity and ways to communicate across racial and ethnic divides in schools. Tatum wrote another, revised and updated 20th anniversary edition of her national bestseller, considering all aspects that have changed dramatically since the original release of Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? With children of color for the first time outnumbering white children in public schools, the backlash against the election of the first black president, the continuing segregation of schools, highly visible incidents of police violence, and the Black Lives Matter movement are all aspects that have dramatically changed since her original release. Tatum's perspectives on effective dialogue about race and racism are especially relevant in today's society with all these new changes. Tatum explains how she likes to start conversations with educators by talking about why it is so challenging for people to talk about race. She typically asks them to recall their own earliest race-related memories. Educators typically respond with memories from when they were around 5 to 7 years old. The emotions associated with these early experiences are usually those of embarrassment, fear, anger, sadness, shame, or even confusion. Tatum reported that most often it's some uncomfortable feeling. Throughout my research, I found that Tatum provided multiple resources for educators to use in the classroom to initiate conversations about race in a fluid way that allows the students to feel safe and comfortable. One resource I found that was an especially great tool was Facing History and Ourselves. This is an online professional learning tool that promotes students' historical understanding, critical thinking, and social-emotional learning, where conversations about the history of racism can spark conversations about modern-day events and bring awareness to past events regarding racism. Tatum presents racial identity and how we can understand it in many of her works. One of these works that I found in my research was a journal article titled Family Life and School Experience: Factors in the Racial Identity Development of Black Youth in White Communities. In this journal article, Tatum explains the in-depth interviews of 18 middle-class Black college students about their experiences growing up in a predominantly white community. Using Cross's model of racial identity development as a theoretical framework for analysis, case studies of 3 women and 2 men were presented to highlight the impact of varied parental socialization practices and school experiences on racial identity development. For all, positive same-race peer relationships, information about African American achievements, the availability of role models, and the encouragement of significant adults were important for academic success and the beginning resolution of identity conflicts. Developing relevant school-based interventions stemmed from these findings as well. Tatum explains that if you live in a neighborhood where everybody or most people are white, where you grew up in a family where all the members are white, or you go to a school and most of the people are white, the chances are you see your white identity as the norm, and you probably don't think much about it. That's not the part of your identity that you're focused on. But when you enter a space, a classroom, or even a workplace where you are now in a racially mixed environment and there's a conversation about issues of race in particular, you may start to have a greater awareness. You start to learn what whiteness means in some ways because you start to see what racial group membership means for other people. This is why understanding racial identity is so important for people of all races, so we can communicate across racial divides within schools and within our communities, while making everybody feel unique, special, and welcome. It can be really helpful to provide students, staff, or even family or friends, but especially educators, with opportunities like joining an organization like Showing Up for Racial Justice. This organization that I found through Tatum's work helps white people support each other in their growth and learning around how to become anti-racist. I hope today that you learned about the concept of racial identity and how important conversations about race in the classroom are. Through Tatum's work, I have learned so much about how to communicate across racial and ethnic divides in schools as a future educator. I am excited to take advantage of these resources she has presented in her work and to take into consideration all of her findings behind the psychology of racism within the school environment. Thank you all so much for listening.